Today's guest is someone who is redefining what leadership really means in the modern world. Dr. Melissa Robinson-Weinmiller believes empathy isn't just a nice to have. It's a leadership superpower that fuels productivity, sparks innovation, and drives profit. Drawing on her own story of being forced to walk away from a decades-long music career because of unempathic leadership, Melissa speaks with both the data and the heart. With over 20 years of cross-industry experience, she's a TEDx speaker, EQ coach, and the author of The Empathic Leader. Her work connects emotional intelligence to the challenges of AI, big tech, and today's global climate, showing us that the so-called soft skills are actually the hardest drivers of lasting success. Please welcome Dr. Melissa Robinson-Weinmiller. How's it going?
Fantastic. After that, wow, that's awesome, Donald. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem. I enjoy doing it. So why don't we start with a little bit of background? Tell everybody how you came into the music side and what it was that made you walk away.
So I was a musician for a long time. I think I mentioned to you, my dad was career military. So He was enlisted, and I am government issue. You know, when you're yep. When you're the child of a military person and you move around a lot, you don't really have, some of the stability that right. Other kids have. And music was always my thing. It went with me wherever I went. I could always have my music, whether it was listening or playing or whatever. And that was that thing that gave me stability during those growing up years. So I just kept going with it. I performed. I was so lucky. I got to perform with people like Ray Charles and Mannheim Steamroller and David Ogden Stiers, he was Winchester on MASH, and he was Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast, and just these super cool people that would never have been in my circle otherwise, and music allowed me to do all of that, and I loved it. But as a gigging musician, I also loved food, shelter, and clothing and benefits and that sort of thing. So I went back and I got my first doctorate and I went out to teach. But within my very first term, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues. And then it got worse because when I went to our boss, I was told as junior female faculty, if I, kept stirring up trouble, I was never going to get tenure. When I went to his boss, I was told if I didn't like it, that I should just leave. And, long story short, over the next 6 years, they basically made sure that I stayed quiet. And eventually I had to leave music altogether, which was hard because it's really all I had known. And by then I was in my early 40s. So it's kind of like, well, now what do I do? Yeah. This is all I've ever wanted to do. So, but I just couldn't quite get over figuring out what had happened. Because, we're talking music. We're not talking medicine where people's lives are on the line. This is an art form. This is supposed to be something that's beautiful. And in academia, where it's supposed to be open thought and all of this. And I was naive enough to believe all of it. And I just couldn't understand what had happened. So I kept digging into this idea of human connection and where the leadership had gone so wrong. And I ended up, doing some consulting with my husband, and I kept seeing these patterns play out over and over and over again. And it was like, all right, there's something really wrong with the way we're building our systems. What is it? And I started getting into the empathy side of things. So now I'm working on my second doctorate because I'm just that kind of, I guess I like that kind of pain. I'm not sure. And it's in interdisciplinary leadership, and my dissertation's on leadership and empathy because I think it's that important that I want to really dedicate my life to it.
Yeah. First of all, I don't think it's a leadership issue with the guy that assaulted you. I think it's a human being issue. It sounds like the guy is just a dirtbag, and there isn't anything in the world that's going to fix that. And where the leadership failed was everybody above him, by allowing it and condoning it and saying, hey, it's good enough for our school. Makes you wonder what they're teaching the kids there. That's their, especially for males, that is the most, time that your brain is finishing and finalizing all of its growth, and you get off on that foot and you go down that path, it could shorten your life quite a bit. But yeah, I get it. And the music industry by itself, without dealing with that stuff, is brutal. It is tough to do. Our nonprofit, man, I struggle all the time with trying to help musicians get heard and get seen. And there's only one speaking, and it seems like Benjamin is the only thing that speaks, because without it, nobody wants to hear you. And it is absolutely tough. So you move on from music, and you decide, hey, what is it that I'm going to do? What is next? Obviously you didn't give up, but what was going through your mind at that point, with that being all you knew? Did you kind of have a plan that you wanted to pursue, or was there another passion?
No. If I can for 5-6 years, I didn't know what to do. And it just seemed like the harder I tried, the worse it got. And I think it was really when I started doing consulting with my husband and seeing people in high leadership positions. But a lot of what we did was in healthcare. So we're also talking to surgeons, and we're talking to, people that should have been leaders. And yet I kept seeing this lack of empathy in places where you'd think there would be more empathy. And I kind of it seemed like I just kind of kept getting pulled back into this, whether I wanted to be or not, because I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't. It was starting to take a toll on my mental health, and my drinking was out of control, and it was bad. So I just knew I couldn't stay there any longer. Yeah.
I have seen it as well. Maybe I didn't realize it as far as being an empathy, but there is a huge difference between the definition of leadership from the military side to the civilian side, right? I worked in corporate America for a while. The definition on that side just seemed like the ability to make somebody make more widgets, right? That's leadership. And that's not leadership. That's being a good company guy. Sure, you're looking out for the business, but where is the actual leadership? Leadership starts by being the example, understanding the fact that, the results you get from your subordinate is the direct reflection of what you're giving them. That is where leadership begins. And that means that you have to get to know the people, and you have to adjust how you lead based off of how that person learns. I've had soldiers that, if I barely even raised my voice, they clammed up and didn't respond well. And those are the guys that, I had to talk to a little bit different, be more empathetic, I guess would be the right term. But then there's also other people that when you try that approach, they just walk over you. And you have to learn the difference. And it's not the subordinate's responsibility to change how they learn. It's the leader's responsibility to change how they teach. And that's where I think there's a big disconnect from the military and the civilian side. And I don't even know if the two even could cross, because it seemed like everybody I worked for read a book by a Navy SEAL, because there's 1,000 of them. And that seems to be the next career after the military is I'm going to write a book. But, I just don't know if you relate that to, because widgets aren't, like you said, they're not life decisions that you're going to make. Nobody's going to die because there's a few less widgets out there, Yeah. Are you seeing something similar to that too as well?
Oh, absolutely. And it goes back to kind of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, we've been dealing with this command and control style leadership for a long time. Yeah. And there's it's like a managerial style of leadership. And I don't mean like a manager. I mean, someone thinks of the organization as a machine. So, there's pieces. People are just pieces in this machine that can either be fixed or they can be replaced and they can be thrown away. And that's it. And if you take this managerial approach, and think of people as cogs in a machine, then that's exactly what you get, and exactly what you're talking about, where you're missing that ability to understand and connect with your people, because that's what empathy is. It's not feeling necessarily. People get this idea that it's feeling, and that's part of it, but that's not even half of it. It's about perspective taking and understanding. So, those that take that managerial style, I wouldn't qualify them as leaders.
Yeah.
Leaders are going to actually be able to have a vision and take people with them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can't, even if you make your goal in whatever field that you're in, and the numbers make it look like you're a great leader, if you have a high turnover rate, I beg to differ that you are a good leader. And I've seen a lot of places that are like that. They try to get the majority to be learn the way they want to teach, and the rest can just go on down the road. But it is difficult. So when you decided to transition from that, did you get into speaking to start out with when you decided to go down this road and step away from what you were doing?
No, I actually just really immersed myself in it for a while, a little over a year, because I wanted to know everything about it before I actually stepped out and started saying anything. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I started working on my book, because for me, writing helps me solidify things. If I can write it down, then I actually start to have a handle on what I'm talking about. And then the speaking kind of came naturally out of that.
Okay. So let's dig into the book then, and stay on track as far as the timeline. I know when I wrote my book, even though it was about me, I struggled. It was nothing like I expected. I never thought that I was going to read my own book 8 times before I even published it. And the editing process and everything. When you dove into this, what challenges did you find when you started writing your book?
I had a really hard time with my story too, because I start out each chapter with a little bit of, what had happened to me, not because I want to wallow in it, but because I think it's important for leaders that read this to see the kind of damage that happens.
Yeah.
Especially with just, not my problem kind of leadership, which I think there was a certain amount of that happened as well. And I struggled with that a lot, because I was like, do I include it? Do I not include it? Do I actually write what I think? Do I sanitize it? What do I do with this? And even now, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, did I really put that out there? But it's there now.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I think that's what makes the writing good, is when you're dealing with nonfiction. I think the number one ingredient isn't sugar. It is authenticity. That should be your main ingredient. And the readers have to be able to recognize that to be able to relate to it. Otherwise, it just leaves them with wondering, is this even realistic? And that's not what you're trying to drive. You're trying to make a change in a huge industry, because everything that's manufactured is got the same problem. It's not any one place I've been or any one place you've been. It's all over the place. And I ended up retiring after my last job. I had enough, and I said, I'm done. So I get it. I also understand too, the other part to this is, by you adding those things in your book, it becomes therapy. When you start writing it, then you can speak it. And once you can speak it, and it slowly gets easier. It's never gone. You'll always have those feelings, but to be able to tell your story and get through it without breaking down is a huge win.
Yeah, it is. And I appreciate that you nailed the word authenticity. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm sure you ran into that as an author as well. I know for me, these people basically took away everything that I thought I was, and I thought I had loved, and I thought I was doing. And I was terrified. I'm like, they're going to take it all away again. They're going to do it again. And I'm like, no, now I'm finally at the point where I can talk about it and be a little more logical about it. And, they kept me quiet for 12 years total. I mean, they can't keep me quiet anymore. So when you talk about it being as therapy, I think you hit that right on the head. I didn't know it walking into it, but you're right.
Yeah, it truly is. I mean, for me, it started with podcasting. I found that I was starting to talk to mostly veterans. I was an all veteran show originally. And it started from some soldiers that had committed suicide. And, from there, I started telling my story, and it became a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And it got me to that point where I could write a book and explain to my wife and kids what had happened to me, because like you said, they were all through the military too. Wherever I went, they went. They were in Germany and Savannah and Fort Bliss and everywhere. And so they were basically in the military too, because all that stuff had to start over for them every place they went. And so I wanted to show what had happened to me prior to deployments versus after, without having that conversation. And that's where my book came from. And I thought I was ready until I picked it up and started writing. And it took me about a year to get it wrote, because I kept putting it down. There was things I still had to work through to be able to get it down. And I credit after, my healing today to that book, because even if you don't publish it, just writing it is going to be a huge help. So what part of the writing part did you find harder? Was it the editing or the data that you were creating and putting into the book?
Actually, for me, the hardest part was finding a good publisher, because I knew I was going to need some help, because I was too close to it. I was going to need some help with someone who could take an objective view. And I discovered that there's a lot of predatory stuff out there around book publishing, and people who lack empathy completely. So,
yes. Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, the writing industry has changed as much as the music industry. The days of selling CDs or books out the back of your car are over with now, and it's tough. It's truly tough to make a living as an author. I don't know too many people that do. Most at best break even, and that's a pretty successful book. The days of Stephen King and stuff like that, I think, are pretty well gone, or at least very rare.
Yeah.
But it is important that we don't let it go away, because you're leaving your document and your time in this period for somebody 30 years from now to pick it up out of a library or even a thrift store or something, and learn your voice and your words without having to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and in a way, it's kind of the democratization of the arts, because it used to be, in music especially, you better have the money if you think you're going to rise to any level. And it doesn't really matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It almost doesn't even matter who you know. It's how much capital can you put behind this, and now you can write your story down and you can get it out there without having gazillions of dollars to back you up. Right. Now, that also means that we have a lot of information out there, which is neither good nor bad, but we have access to it. And now we can all be authors, and we have a story and say it and tell it. And, it's different than it was, but it's also pretty cool that now we can put our stories out there.
Yeah, I ran into that same issue when I was looking for a publisher, and I just finally quit looking and said, you know what, I can publish this myself. And I just used a self-publishing. I didn't go through Amazon. Just some of the reasons, not that Amazon's bad, it's just some of their policies and the way they do things is a little bit different. and you lose a little bit of your rights to your own stuff. But I did go to another site, and the big difference is the reach. That's what the real big difference is. Your pool of people drops drastically when you do it yourself. However, when you go to somebody else, they're going to make sure you don't make very much, because the return on it, your royalties, because now they own the book. So they're taking a chunk of your royalties, and they're the ones that are putting up the money in front to get you in front of people and book signings and everything else. Even that blew my mind, was how book signings work. A lot of those places like Barnes and Nobles and stuff, they'll let you set up a booth and do a book signing, but they're taking a cut of every book that's sold. They don't care that you brought the books and that you bought them. So it is difficult, and you're absolutely right. It's not even just in the United States. There's overseas publishing companies that have moved in, and they want to charge $5,000 to $10,000 to get your book published, and you're just not going to make your return on it. It is tough, but a lot of people don't know, and they count on that. So I do understand. But there is still some good ones. I've ran into some good publishing companies that are out there to obviously make a living, but they do care about the person that they're dealing with as well.
Yeah.
So after you got it published, right, and you said, okay, it's now sitting in stores and ready to be sold. Well, what's going through your mind at this point? You wrote a book, and your life is changing. Even the way we do things is changing. What did you think was coming next, or where did you want it to go?
I didn't really know. All I knew is I thought I had a message that I thought was important, because I'd been reading all these studies about how we're losing empathy in society, how, dark triad. So people that don't have empathy, and there's psychopaths, sociopaths, Machiavellians, and narcissists. And narcissism in particular, there's studies that show this is on the rise, especially in the United States. And, it used to be if you ran into one of these dark triad people, they were 1 in 20. Well, the statistics now say it's more like 1 in 14.
Wow.
So, I'm like, empathy is the antidote to this. Empathy is the thing these people miss. I need to be talking about this. I talk about it in leadership circles because, that's where people can do the most good, and also where they do a lot of damage. But I see this as a societal thing. I mean, we as a society need to start coming to some decisions about who we want to be in the future. Yeah. So I didn't really know what was going to happen next. I just knew that I felt I had something important to say,
Would you say that, because I agree, I've heard stats similar that very successful CEOs of Fortune 500s have a lot of the same characteristics as sociopaths and dangerous people, and that they do believe that they can accomplish anything, and it should be about them. So I do agree with that. But where did it come from? What do you think? What do you think reinforced that? Is it just the addiction to power? Do you think is where it came from, or do you think some of how technology changed has kind of reinforced that with the whole "I want instant satisfaction now" kind of attitude? Where would you say this kind of reinforced it at?
So I was actually reading an article about this, and it was talking about how in society, you figure, about 7% of these people are dark triad. I mean, they're out there. But then when you start getting into places with a lot of power and a lot of money, whether it's top level leadership or government or, high medical surgeons, that kind of thing, that number can be as high as 25%.
Wow.
Yeah. And part of it is the power and money. They're attracted to that kind of thing. Part of it with that group in particular, from what I've read, they really crave novelty. They want excitement. They want wow. They want bang. They want, that constant influx of energy.
Mhm.
So those kind of positions where you're going to have that's what they like. And also the attention, the bright lights. I'm the superstar. I'm the look at me leading all of these people. Aren't I great? Never mind that all these people are doing the work, but aren't I great? So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they might find those kind of positions attractive.
Yeah, I think you're right. Especially, think about as the president of the United States, how many times a day somebody tells you how good you're doing, or how good you look, or your ties look good, or whatever, right? Just so that they can get that FaceTime with you, and you hear that stuff over and over. That's a proven science. They talk about teaching children to say, I am somebody, I am pretty, I am whatever, in the mirror every morning when they wake up. Well, that's because when you hear it over and over, your mind starts thinking it. Once your mind thinks it, that carries out. So I think I could see where that would come from as well. And the more I think about it, I don't think social media. Most of those guys don't even deal with social media. They have other people that deal with it for them. So they don't even really see what people are saying or talking about them. But yeah, so with how you've interacted with the smaller companies, right? And you're talking to them, what kind of response are you getting back from not just the leader, but the other people that are, the lower managers and stuff that are in these talks?
So my hope really lies with the middle managers and directors and people, in the lower positions. Usually the people that are in the top C-suite, unless they really see a reason to change, they're not going to, because they've gotten to that point by doing something, and they're going to stick to that something, even if there's potentially a better way. In my experience, I mean, it isn't that way always. Sometimes there's some open-minded people, but generally speaking, they're not going to change unless there's a real clear reason why they need to, usually profit motivated.
Yeah.
The middle set, though, the managers, the directors, the people that can really lead down and lead up, who can really see what kind of impact decisions have coming all the way down, and culture. I mean, culture is major, and who can set their own culture within their own little microcosm. They're the people that I really want to reach, because number one, they can lead up and lead down. So they're affecting the most people. But number two, they're going to be the top level leaders of tomorrow. So why not start practicing it now? So when you get into that position, this is just how you lead.
Well, and I think also at that level, like you said, they have to lead down as well. But those positions are usually out there on the floor. They see the struggles that people are going through. So when somebody complains about something, they can either discount it or acknowledge it because they're seeing it. They either know it exists or it doesn't. Not that they're looking at a report from their office. They're physically out on the floor with the people that are either happy or sad. And, it's hard on a leader to work for a bunch of unhappy people. Because, your days just become nightmares. And it starts with you to be able to change that. At the same time, have to appease the people above you and get the results that they want as well. So, I relate that to our E5s. Our sergeants in the Army. They work hand in hand with the lower enlisted, and they're the ones that everybody vents to. But then when they come to their bosses, they can't vent. They have to say, "Yeah, Roger, we'll complete this mission," so forth. And then they'll go back down and say, "Well, we've just got to do what we got to do, guys." And then they take it. They take the brunt of it, and it makes it difficult.
Yeah.
Where do you think that we'll start seeing? You said it before that you were talking with mostly medical people before you started this, and I would think, in the medical industry, I would think there would be more empathy than anywhere else, at least with the physicians and the nurses, maybe not the administrative side of it. But is that a true statement as well? Are we really seeing that most of this is in the manufacturing side, or is it everywhere?
No, I think it's everywhere. I mean, it just, that's what I mean. I think it's societal. I think it goes beyond any one organization.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned social media earlier too. There's a lot of studies out there about that. And that isn't going to apply to top level leaders necessarily. But there's one author, her name is Jean Twenge, and she looks specifically at these younger generations and how social media has affected them. And she thinks that could be part of the rise of narcissism because they get this main character syndrome. My followers, my connections, this revolves around me. This is my channel. And they don't have the opportunity to actually interact and gain perspective from other people. So then as they grow up, that's what they're growing into.
Yeah. I mean, I can 100% agree with that part of it. You see it in interviews. I can see a huge difference. I could interview the same 22, 23-year-old and interview him online and then in person, and they will be 100% completely different. They will do better on that virtual interview than they will when they have to sit in person, and you can see all their little movements and their hands. They don't know what to do with those. They just kind of keep moving them around. The shakes, when they shake your hand, are usually rather weak, and it's just because they don't get the practice. There is no interaction between them and other people, at least in real life.
Yeah.
So do you think there's any room for like artificial intelligence to, change some of this? Because if you talk with like ChatGPT kind of does that same thing. It kind of boosts your ego and tells you could give it the worst book in the world and it's going to tell you it's going to be the bestseller.
Yeah.
It will not take any chances that it hurt your feelings. But and I don't know that necessarily that is a positive thing. I think, with artificial intelligence, you kind of want more like what you expect from your journalists. You want unbiased information that's either true or false, and take the emotion out of it. But it's scary when you start thinking about how many people, the stories you hear of people that are just, that's their friend now, and that's who they talk to. It would do that same thing. I mean, if I'm told how great I am every day, at some point I'm going to walk out that door and everybody better treat me about how great I am because I was told how great I was for a year.
Yeah, no, it's true. And we're starting to see some of the repercussions from that now, because like there's lawsuits going on about with kids. There's a 14-year-old in Florida where they got involved in these AI relationships and they became so caught up in it that then when AI started ripping them apart, they couldn't disconnect. They couldn't, this was their only friend, and ended up committing suicide. There's some studies out there right now with patients that, maybe we're using the chatbot as a therapist or that kind of thing. And they end up devolving into psychosis and some of the conspiracy stuff that everybody is listening to me. And it's really scary. But I actually think the scariest part about it is like these AI bots can mimic empathy better than some people. So why wouldn't you want to go and connect with this thing that's going to show you, even though it doesn't have it, it can't have it. It doesn't. Yeah. It's got no idea how to understand or connect or take perspective of other people or anything. It can't, but it mimics it so well. Why wouldn't you want to go talk to that instead of the people in your life that may not be giving any kind of empathy?
Yeah, no, you are absolutely correct. And I think a lot of that makes kind of the perfect storm. We disconnected from everybody, society, got to the point where the news and the information, all I had to do was pick up my phone and I had it in seconds of what just happened 30 minutes ago, and then
you add that to the point that nobody even knows their neighbor's name anymore because there is no interaction out there that's happening. And then you take something like this to come after that. So now it's got you to the point where you want to be here, not outside and interacting with people. And it would make it easy to be manipulated. So I do see that side of it as not a positive thing. I had a guest on here that he was very big into AI, several businesses, so forth. And I asked him what he thought AI was going to do to society in the future. And I got an answer that I did not expect. He said, to be honest, it's going to make us start interacting in person with people again versus sitting on a screen. And I said, well, how is that? And he said, because AI is going to get so good that unless you can touch it, hold it, and poke it, you're not going to know if it's real. And that'll be what people start craving is to know that what they're talking to is real information. And he's right. You look at all the scams out there where people are they're FaceTiming and they look like your son or somebody asking for money, and they've got your number and you're looking at them, talking to them, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
that is some scary stuff.
Yeah. Have you seen the deep fakes with like actual government officials? Like sending Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, or so as if it isn't enough that you think these are real people, you now think you're getting attention from people who are in, powerful positions. And sure, that's addictive. I mean, that would be, it would make you feel special. It would make you feel important.
Yeah. 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 I agree 100%. So, in your bio, it talks about that you were a TEDx speaker. How did that come about?
Same thing. I was just like, I've got something that I want to talk about. Well, who's going to let me talk about it? Well, will TEDx take this? I don't know, but I guess we'll throw it in there and see what happens. And then they were like, yes, we would love for you to come talk about self-empathy and self-judgment. And I'm like, fantastic. I'm on my way.
Yeah, I can just imagine, you get those results and you're just like, wow, who would have thought we're going here,
Totally.
What was that experience like? Was it pretty nerve-wracking or had you done it so much at that point that you felt pretty comfortable?
I'm pretty comfortable on stage just because I've always been on stage, and that was still nerve-wracking because of what it was. It was like, you've got to hit these marks. It's got to be like this. It has to be within this time period. It has to fit all these parameters. If you make a misstep, we're going to yank it. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know what it's a lot. Yeah. So it was like, okay, I guess I better mind my P's and Q's and make sure I get this right.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of audience was you getting from that? Was it a lot of the industry leaders that came out to hear it or see it, or your audience that's rewatching it as it was recorded or whatever? Are you getting the right audience that can help make these changes?
Honestly, they haven't released it yet.
Oh, okay.
And it's because I got editor's pick, that's awesome. I mean, when I went into this, I didn't even know it existed, but that means that they put it up on the big channel and they actually put some of their marketing behind it and stuff, which is awesome. But it also means I'm on their timeline. So it hasn't been released yet.
Okay. I mean, I think obviously if it's going to that point, they're going to make sure it's in front of the right audience, That's marketing 101 right there.
Yeah. Here's hoping.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we get to the top here. You're speaking in front of people. Are you seeing any progress with some of these places, or are you still to that point where you're pushing for the change and the results haven't quite caught up yet?
I'm still pushing for the change. And there's a lot of myths out there about what empathy is, that I try to actually talk about, because a lot of the pushback that I do get is based on stuff that isn't necessarily true. Like this idea that empathy is all about feeling.
Right.
It's not all about feeling. You don't have to be touchy-feely. You don't have to, having empathy doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. It's not soft. Yes, there's data that shows it actually does create better profit, productivity, and innovation, all of this. So I'm still right now in the process of just trying to be heard and to get people to understand a little better about what this is so that they can see why it's important.
Yeah. What are some of the characteristics you would want to see in say a manager or a first line supervisor that would start to show that empathy side, but not hurt the bottom line, still focused for the company of production?
So one of the things I look for primarily is an ability to be able to have self-empathy, because if you can't have empathy for yourself, you're not going to have it for anybody else because you don't understand what it is. So primarily, I need people that are willing to take a look and be aware of their place within these organizations and say, yes, I'm doing this well. Yeah, I could do this better. Yes, empathy means I'm still going to give the hard employee reviews. I'm still going to have to deal with the difficult personalities. Business still has to get done, and there needs to be a profit, because without a profit, this business doesn't exist.
Yep.
But there's a way to go about this by using empathy where I can actually maximize my human-to-human potential and create a better ecosystem for everybody, which translates into better profit, productivity, and innovation.
Yeah, I would say, the thing that I seen was that the way you were treated changed every month. You made your numbers, you're a hero. You didn't make your numbers, you were at the other end of the spectrum. There was no middle ground of saying, well, let's figure out what went wrong. It was either your fault and we didn't do it. We failed as leaders, and it didn't matter. There was no tolerance of where you should be. You were either not making your numbers or you did, bottom line. And it seemed kind of like our politics, the two sides that you hear screaming from are coming from the very far ends. The middle ground, the people that are sane and sitting around going, what is going on? What is everybody so upset about? That's the middle area right there. And I think you've got to have, if you don't have no empathy, then you're never going to be able to look at somebody's failure as a learning opportunity. It's always going to be a blame type scenario.
Yes. And you said the word blame. It's always, and it's never, I'm going to take responsibility myself. It's always, you did this, you caused this, you messed this up, pointing the fingers, right? And you can't have empathy and continue to do that. And you are so absolutely right on too about that. This is a learning experience. And this is how humans learn. This is, the idea of these organizations, it's all artificial. It's something that we've built and we've bought into it and said, this is the system we're going to be in, but it's not real. So the way humans interact with each other, human to human, that's real, because that's what goes back to the dawn of humans.
Yeah.
These organizations as we know them now really have only been around since the 1900s or slightly before. In 100 years or 200 years or 500 years, we could be looking at them and going, wow, we were really barbaric. Why did we allow this to happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, we just got done seeing, how fast your history can be changed, and the recourse that we went through with taking down statues and pulling books out of libraries and all this stuff that we're no longer going to teach anymore. We've seen how your voice can be erased, and that's where my goals are with this show, is to get people's stories out there to where they're on the internet. The only thing that they can't be erased, that, they will always be there. You just depending on how hard you have to look. But I think that's a big deal, because who knows what's going to be talked about us 40 years, 50 years from now. I relate it to, can you imagine how different today would be if George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and all of them had the technology that we have today? If they could have a podcast and that we could have gone back and watched to understand what they were thinking when they made these decisions, how many events could have been changed from learning from those versus all we have is books wrote by other people that never met them.
Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought about that necessarily, but absolutely. And it also, brings to mind that we need to be thinking about what we're saying and doing and making as best we can with the best of intent, the best decisions we can.
Yeah.
Because now we'll be able to have people looking back and saying that. So all the more reason why getting rid of some of the toxicity and nonsense might be in our own best interest.
100%. Because we just hit on that topic just a few minutes ago about, if it's fake information that's being put out there, well, something said in that fake information could make a decision by somebody's life or government or whatever. We don't necessarily have to be talking about the changing of a whole nation, from a podcast or something. But somebody may take something that was said and try it because it was bad information. It could lead to somebody getting killed or damage to something or crime or something. So those are all decisions that were made from stuff that they found. And I think that's where the dangers comes from with AI and stuff like that. It's impossible to believe that we'll ever get to the point where no bad stuff will come from any of our technology. They're always going to find loopholes and ways around it to work harder to make money than if they would have got a legitimate job.
Yeah.
But it is very interesting. I never really thought about this as going through corporate America. It always baffled me because the leadership is so different, and the thought process is so different, and it makes perfect sense. Without empathy, you only really have a hole. There's just nothing there. There's no sense of feeling. And that's where exactly what I said came from. You're either made your numbers and you're a hero, or you didn't make your numbers and you're a zero. And there's no in the middle. If you could pick something from 30 years from now, where would you like to see, what things would you like to see companies or HRs to start implementing to improve some of this toxicity?
If it were a perfect Melissa world and I could have whatever I wanted, I would have. Oh man, well, it's all puppies and rainbows for sure. I would have them start implementing, any organization, academia, profit, nonprofit, anybody, actually have them start implementing a kind of social emotional learning. So, and other countries already do this. We look at the Norse countries, Denmark and Norway and Finland, and they've had this in place where they teach social emotional learning from the time kids are 6 until they're 16. So they learn how to socially deal with all these different emotions and how it can be used in a pro-social way. And these countries get happiest nation status, top 10, and have since the Nixon administration. Yeah. So what do they know that we don't? Well, we're not teaching it in our schools because we allowed it to kind of start to mean stuff that it doesn't, and overloaded it with a lot of stuff that shouldn't have been there. But that doesn't mean as adults we can't learn it. So why couldn't we have social emotional learning in corporations, in organizations? Yeah,
I think that's something that's different from the military. In the military, you have a person that's their whole job is equal opportunity. They deal with these kind of complaints that we're talking about. And it's a place that's neutral that somebody can go to raise these kind of issues. When I got in the civilian world, that doesn't exist. That's your HR. No. Your HR does it. But again, who does your HR work for? The top guy. So, there is some bias if you want to keep your job. And that's what I have seen in the past, that the complaints don't even have any empathy. They just blow it off, and you're just a worker. So go out there and pretend you're happy.
Yeah. Well, and if you cause too much trouble, we can pull that piece out of the machine and we can plug another one in, and it's up to you. Are you going to work in the machine or are you not?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ms. Melissa, I'm going to bring you forward and give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can find you and where they can purchase your book and everything else.
Well, thank you so much. So you can catch me at my website, and that is EQ Via Empathy, and that's Via as in Victor, IA. And if you want to just check out a chapter of the book, if you leave your email, sign up for my newsletter, I am giving away a free chapter because I want to get this message out as far and wide as I can. You can also catch me on LinkedIn. You can catch me on Instagram. I have my own podcast, which is called The Empathic Leader, and that's on Spotify and Apple and on YouTube. And my book, The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation, is found on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's on anywhere you can find on the web. And right now I have a Kindle version, a hardcover, a softcover, and there will be an audiobook version coming out probably in the next month or so.
All right. And I will make sure that we link to the Spotify and the Apple for your podcast, and as well as an Amazon spot for your book. I had a really good time because this is a topic that is instrumental and could even improve our manufacturing industry is no longer as good as it used to be. And I'm not saying this is the reason why, but as we grow and we get that back, this is the right time to change that mentality. It's kind of like a do-over. And you never thought about it until I came across you. So even you made me think a little bit about the stuff that I seen, and it made a little bit more sense. So I hope all the listeners got something out of it. And it starts with you. If you find out that you're in charge of somebody, or you're not in charge of somebody, but you have to work with another person, it starts right there. If you can't even have empathy for the guy that's working with you, you're not going to have it as a leader. So you can start working on those skills right then and there. And it just takes the mindset that says, I'm going to make a change, and just to follow through with it. So I hope everybody had a good time. I know I did. Y'all, thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, and don't forget, don't let the day kick your ass. Kick the day's ass.